Welcome back to Kamen Rider Review, episode 121. We are here reviewing the last 3 episodes of Kamen Rider Black RX. It is also the end of the Showa TV shows, but we're not. It turns out, though, I'm not done with the Showa era just yet. Why? Well, there's the movies, obviously. I'm doing those next. And then I'll be done with the Showa era. Yep, because Toei considered basically the full movies there in the 90s, despite the fact it aired during the Heisei era, part of the Showa era because the original creator still being around when these movies came out. Yeah. Okay, so in the case of 45, this is the standard, okay, so the Kamen Riders are here, so let's bring back some dead monsters. Well, supposedly putting this up, first we have Grand Taurus killed off partway through the episode. And supposedly, RX dies. So, Marabon decides to summon a bunch of dead monsters killed off over the course of the series. Yep. As part of the Shadow, the Spirit Army. Which comprise the revived versions of Cyclotron, Zonjin, Antrot, Gamaki, Galape, Metal Harry, and Egron. Now, Skoma was the first monster seen in the show. Yep. Yeah, he was seen basically in the first 2 episodes, comes back for this episode. He was also featured in the only movie that this series had. And that was the last of him. Kokakan. Yeah, he was one of the monsters that was summoned by, I think it was, yeah, basically for these monsters, Kokakan is one of... It was actually the very first monster that Geteron summoned. Yep. Sama was one of Mama's monsters. Zojin is a monster from Marbon, basically a second of hers. Yep. There's, like I mentioned, Antrot. Well, it's not one of hers. Let's see. Antrot is another one of Geteron's monsters. There's also, like I mentioned, Gamakiki. Yeah, he is one of Busuken's monsters. Ganapio, another Busuken monster. Metal Harry. That is a monster from, I believe, from Gate Zone. Yep. As a matter of fact, Metal Harry and Egron are basically two of his monsters. Metal Heavy, here's the thing about him. He was the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. He was the fifth to last monster that he had for the whole series. Yep. So, also, one way they found by these monsters, Garo appears in this episode, so he's hands on papers to what plan we're going to do. And this, of course, after, of course, basically, Well, I think this is still when RX is still supposedly gone. So, like, wait, I thought I made 13 papers. But Joe Point's like, wait, there's supposed to be 10 Kamen here. Why is there 11? Well, it turns out basically one has got a bogus one. Yep. So they battle it, and of course, easily find out. And look up, Goro knows who this monster is because he helped take him on. Eventually, of course, the monsters. Now, of course, also this very same monster, they took out this yellow feather, which of course Mark put all these monsters. And then, eventually, of course, basically, Robo does come back, and eventually he takes Marbon's feathers from her, puts them on the monsters, destroys them. It's almost like in these last few episodes, it seems like that basically the 10 Kamen are basically just reduced to being like doing nothing, just witnessing what RX is doing. And in my opinion, that's kind of okay-ish, but not terrible. Here's the reason why. It's not their show. It's RX's show. They're just guest stars. So me personally, I don't have a problem with this as long as you give something to do. I think that the spirit thing with the bogus Kamen Rider, that actually was something interesting. But this is a reused Kamen Rider plot thread, a bogus Kamen Rider. But here's the thing though. Not the first time they've actioned a bogus one for Kamen number 1. Oh no. Apparently the one of the script writers, he must have basically found a script from the original show like, hey, there's a plot there for the original. We have these fake Kamen Rider. So, except that those were the Shocker Riders. Those were awesome. And they appeared for like 4 episodes. Yeah, basically it's a mess disguise type of thing. Yeah, the whole thing of the fake Kamen Rider thing, that's nothing new. They generally have had this in pretty much almost every single series to date. Mostly. Yeah. And Barbara herself gets her face scarred in this episode. And that scar remained for the next 2 episodes. And so Jark is like, well, 3 main commanders are gone. Marbon got humiliated, defeated. So he's like, I'm going to do this myself. So then, of course, basically goes to an area where supposedly they go to this underground fortress. Supposedly, I don't know exactly where this is. It could be Japan, but they don't specifically say where this place is. Except that I've seen this footage before. In Masked Rider. And you're thinking, what? Yes. Seriously. They used this for Masked Rider. In the episode Million Dollar Furbus, which is episode 31 of the series, and this is what featured Emperor Crisis. This was his debut in the series. Yeah, this also featured his counterpart, Lava Sect, which here's kind of the thing when it comes to him. In Masked Rider, despite the fact you've watched this show and Masked Rider, like, wait, Dragon, that's your boss. In the case Masked Rider, nope, he's just a random monster he just found on the ground. In this show, yeah, this is Jark's boss. They also this thing where, oh, Jark is being like, the whole thing of him being controlled with tentacles and stuff happening to him. That was also seen in the very same episode. Except what happens next. That is not from. That was not used for this. That was not used for that episode. That was used for a completely different episode. Because Jark is disassembled and reformed as Jark Marduk, the strongest inhumanoid. And in Masked Rider, this was Dragon's clone. Yep, this was his clone of alright. Yeah, apparently Marbon took a sample of his DNA and created this freaking clone. Which in the course of RX, this was the penultimate villain of the entire series that Masked Rider had to fight. And then he does something completely unthinkable. His first act is to go after the family that RX lives with and murders the parents right in front of their children by breaking their necks with his hands. Wow. Too bad we don't see this in the U.S., basically, where we have parents getting, well, probably because it's a little more too real life, and they probably don't want to ruin basically the comedy of a kid's show. I can see why this footage was never seen in the show. Like, if you watch this after watching Mass, like, wait, the main villain murdered the parents? Yeah, by breaking their necks. They don't show the breaking per se, but yeah, it's implied that he did do that. And of course, he's about to take the kids hostage, and then he's saved by V3. I think it's V3, Amazon, and I think it's Raider Man who saves them. I think also Amazon as well. So those two take the kids to Conroe, and they of course battle Jark until they go back to the city. Which, wait, this area looks very familiar. Yeah, this is the same area they used last season of the show when Geteron had their three, well, the former high priests become the Grand Mutants and attack the area. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of deja vu from Black where they use the same areas. Probably to save money. So then Jark is like, goes back to his microphone like, Contro, I challenge you to a one-on-one battle. And he accepts. And then he transforms into Jark, Madron is like, and so goes like, he killed Papa. It's an excellent battle. The kids briefly get involved. Of course, the battle draws to a freaking warehouse, where one of the kids picks up, I think it's Golden Robo Raider's gun, fires at him. Doesn't do much anything, but it does buy him time. They finally beat him at a cliffside. This is like goes all over the place, and then he dies. You're like, wow, they kill off the main general in the penultimate episode. Usually this is saved for the final episode. And then, of course, basically, the unthinkable happens. Then, of course, the Emperor. We also have it where Moribond sees something in the previous episode. I think it was in this episode in particular, where that's around basically how his eyes made red. And I read basically that this was, I don't know if this will change whatever, where apparently he does question about the whole thing. About him, well, we'll reveal that a bit later. Because I realized, he was questioning it and then he just explodes. Yeah, the Wiccan lied about this. So, he's brought before the Emperor, where he is offered the position of the commander of the Crisis Empire. Moribund is like this, so she fights him, and then Crisis kills her. But for some reason, leaves the feather behind, and he doesn't take it. And then, of course, basically, because they turn him down, then, of course, he tracks out in the spaceship, which the spaceship footage from this episode was also used for that very same episode as well. They basically don't go down this little area that could be like the Grand Canyon and come up. That's all you see from that very same episode. And of course, they're like, well, those five, he's probably thinking, well, those 5 buffoons are gone. The ship is mine. I'm going to basically conquer Earth now. Well, that's until RX shows up, basically gets into a fight with them. At one point, getting trapped in that little spinny thing we see. Oh, and by the way, the whole sequence of... If you ever watch Mass Rider, there's this one area of the ship where they have these monsters in the tubes and shot down via teleporter. Yeah, that was completely made up for Mass Rider. That particular shot is never seen here at all. And he bows in for a while, and then, of course, he explodes, turns into him. Though I think there's an error here, because I do see that this is basically a guy in a costume. And eventually, after a really good battle, they also... Apparently, Emperor Crisis blames Earth for destruction of Demon World, even though that RX argues back, you're the one who destroyed Demon World thanks to your policies. By the way, the Mass Riders are here, and here's a little fun fact about Emperor Crisis. He is voiced by the same guy who voiced the great leader Shocker, and this part they did get correct about this, because I read a little info about this. The writers don't recognize the fact that it is the great leader Shocker. Because I've heard this guy is associated with the Great Leader Shocker, but there's not much evidence to prove it. So, eventually, the Emperor Crisis himself is defeated in this open quarry because they love quarries. So, they bury the parents. Oh, by the way, in these episodes, Keiko meets the two kids because she has the Kamen. So, after Crisis is defeated, what happens to the characters? Well, first, the writers split up, and they're never seen again until the movie, until basically a movie that came out in the 2000s. No, seriously, this was basically like the end of the Kamen Riders. Yeah. Because what would be the next time that the first 10 show up? Or after the show wraps up, let's see. Their next appearance, excuse me, one of them, the original appears in an episode. Actually, no, that's not it. Next time they all appear is Double O Dano. Let's Go Kamen Riders. Yep, that's the next time they appear. There is another movie that features basically like the Kamen Riders. Yeah, it appears like the detention ones. But yeah, that would be the next time they appear. Would be in that movie. Which came out in 2011, roughly 12 years later. Yep, that's when they all next appear. But what about RX, you might ask? Well, after the show wraps up, I think he also appears in that show as well. Well, not really. No, his next appearance actually is basically an alternate version of him in 2 episodes of Kamen Rider Decade, played by the same actor. Yeah. Believe it or not, the same actor who played him in this one also plays him in the Ultimate Universe stuff. Yeah. He comes back basically playing 2 the versions of this character. Playing these. Yeah. So that's next time they appear. Actually, well, no, it wasn't that one. It was actually. It wasn't 2011. It was actually 2009. Roughly 20 years later. Where it's like Kamen Rider Decade. All Riders versus Die Shocker. That would be the next time they appear. Yep. But you're thinking, okay, what about the supporting cast? Well, here's the sad thing. The supporting cast are never seen again in the Kamen Rider franchise. Nope. They never return. Rico, Joe, Kiko. Nope. Rico still wants to become a photographer. Garo basically trying to become the Japanese best cook. The 2 kids, Glib and Kikyo. Joe Hayes basically searched for his memory. Apparently that was a forgotten plot thread of him finding who the heck he is. And that's pretty much it. It's a nice happy ending, and it's probably by far the only one that basically doesn't end with like, oh, let's just have basically just write off and never be seen again. Because normally they have a lot of you just end with the writer just writing off and just having the show end and have no exact what's going to happen to the supporting cast. Because a recurring thing with all the previous Showa series was that, with the exception of Toshi Tabata, with the exception of him, none of these characters appear again. Unknown why that the supporting cast can come back. Now, I have heard also that the actor who plays Kotaro, he has gotten in trouble in the last decade due to comments he's made. Not to criminal actions per se. Oh no, he's not like Super 1 where he's a complete scumbag. The actor, not the character. Super 1's awesome. His actor is a scumbag. He, of course, said some stuff, basically, that people got chastised for, so we call him Kamen Black as a play in his character, because I think he's a black sheep of the family, though he has apologized for his actions. But that's pretty much what's happened to him since then. I enjoy Black RX. Is it as good as Black? No, it isn't. It's a good series. But this is pretty much the end of the short TV shows. But I would give basic final thoughts to show here. Excuse me. But next, I'm going to watch the 4 movies that came out in the 90s. And then afterwards, I'll work on Baka Ranger. But you might think, okay, after those movies, what's the next Kamen Rider series to talk about? Well, 80s are done. Can you believe the 80s will release like 3 shows? Super 1, Black RX. And like 1 T movie. And that was it. Yeah, so the next one will be the second ever Heisei series, Kamen Rider Agato. That'll be the next series to replace this one. But before that, 4 straight movies, and then, well, on to other stuff. Basically, Baka Ranger will be right after that. Okay? But the reviews for that probably come later on today. Okay? Next video. Bye.